You're tuning into Ready, Set, Reset, where our goal is to help listeners reset their outlook by providing a closer look into behavioral and mental health in our youth. We visit with a range of professionals across the field to get their input and insight on what's really going on. Our first series kicks off with the Student Mental Health Chronicles, which features school counselors from across Texas, from public to private. This podcast is for educational and motivational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional training or personal therapy. Hello, and welcome to the Ready, Set, Reset podcast. I'm your host, Sierra O'Neill, licensed professional counselor and founder of Reset IOP. With me is my co-host, Mrs. Penny Haight, licensed professional counselor supervisor and owner of Counseling by Penny and Associates. You're tuning in to an episode of an inspiring podcast that spotlights school counselors and the incredible work they do day in and day out with students. The content you will hear on this podcast today is focused on the struggles in the schools related to the mental health of youth, providing weekly insight, resources, and solutions to address the growing and ongoing issues that will support other school counselors, parents, teachers, and students. Today, we are live at the 19th Annual Texas School Counselor Conference in San Antonio, and our guest today is a school counselor who's going to be anonymous with us here today, but still going to give us some more insight and tell us a little bit about herself and her work in the field. So welcome, and how are you feeling today?
Hi, I'm feeling a little excited. This is my first conference, and I'm really excited to see all the different foods and information and learn and get back to the campus and use what I learn here.
Awesome. Okay. And as far as yourself, I know you said you're excited to pick up what you learned here today and take it back to the campus. Tell us a little bit about yourself regarding, how long you've been a school counselor, what made you jump out there into school counseling?
Yes. So I was a teacher for a long time and in the classroom, and I work in middle school. There's a lot of changes going on with the kids in middle school. So over the years, kids would come to me with, issues or whatever. So I decided to go back to school to get my school counselor degree. And now I'm working in the middle school as a counselor. This is my third year as a middle school counselor.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was it.
Awesome. Okay. And I know you mentioned you were a teacher for several years. Now that you're a school counselor, would you go back to being a teacher or?
Some days, yes. But no, what I miss with being a teacher is the day-to-day relationships. I don't get that. I only get that with a few students as opposed to all my students.
Okay. Hey, I can definitely understand that, just because coming from a classroom, there's 20 to 25 kids in a classroom, and then as a school counselor, you have a student body of how many students are you responsible for?
There are 2 counselors on my campus, and we service over 1,030 students.
Wow. I'll say you are such a blessing to the schools, because 2 counselors with over 1,000 students, I know, like I said, it has to be a lot and takes away from being able to have those relationships.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and jump into some questions here. So as a school counselor, what would you say is your biggest struggles in the school when it comes to supporting the students?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, but the 2 that I really want to talk about are grief counseling. Recently, we had one of my students, her sibling passed away. He's a college student, and she wasn't there, but her girlfriends were there, and they were it was, groups would come in, and there's only 2 of us, and it was just, I felt like I could have had more. We had really great conversations, but I feel like I need more training on that. I want to be able to help more with grief, and it's not something that's an everyday issue, but when it is, it's very, very important to be able to help those students. Go ahead.
I was going to say, are you familiar with William Steele, Grief, Trauma, and Loss? There's a lot of resources on his page, and he does basically goes in and does the debriefing, but there's so much free resource out there that he has, and a great training for situations that happen like that, where you can deal with a group.
Okay.
Excellent training.
Okay. I'll look into that. I think the other thing is we get pulled away for other things like testing. Yeah. And that's the thing. The clerical stuff, the other stuff that takes away from our time with our students, like to build the relationships, to be there for them, to know them. So we take our lunch times to go into the lunch area and actually see them like interacting with other people so that we can know how they really are, like, in their own worlds. So that's a thing.
So it sounds like that maybe that piece is missing again, where you can have them in, group settings or interact with them more, but then doesn't bleed into your personal time, bleed into your lunchtime. So I'm wondering, as far as like the school allowing something like to where they had a group or elective where they could miss some of that class and come to some type of social group or meet with the counselors. Is that something that you guys may offer, or something the school may be open to?
Well, we started recruiting, I guess.
Okay.
We started recruiting kids, like my partner and I, because we want to have like those groups. But as we picked a topic, right, and we wanted them to sign up to like audition to see if they wanted to be in that group. And as the year has gone by, there's other situations where I think that we need a group for that and a group for this, and that's the thing. Like it's hard. Like once we organize it, I'm sure it'll be fine. It's the starting of the programs that we're like having issues with, but we're working on it.
Gotcha. Okay. And was that something more specifically like you advocated for, or?
Yeah, we did. One of our groups, I don't know if that's going to go on some like the next one, some other
Okay.
question, but, one of our groups that we started this year was like what do we call it? A stallion stampede. And we did this for then like kids that come, we have feeder schools, right? And they come all friends, and they've been friends for years, elementary. And then we have new to the district kids, or kids coming from another school that wasn't a feeder school. So they're like alone. And so we started that group to get the kids to go and advocate for them and bring them in and be like a helper.
Okay.
So that was our group that we started.
Awesome. Okay. So going into the next question, as far as this, the staff and kind of working with parents, how common is it for you to get support from parents when the student is struggling emotionally or with behavioral issues?
It varies. Most of the time, when we contact parents, it's because they need to know what's going on. And one of the, we tell our children that whatever is said there stays there, unless there are situations that we have to go outside of the office. But the staff seems to be like very supportive. Like the kids we have a Google form, and the kids, they'll send us kids like, can you check on this kid?
Okay.
Or I heard the kids talking about this, can you check on that? And the parents are really good to like show up, and our campus is really blessed that we have a lot of parental involvement.
Awesome. Okay. That's awesome.
So they are supportive of that. I have worked at other campuses where the parents are kind of like, well, can you help them? Like, y'all fix them?
Yeah.
And I know we're glad to help, but our campus right now is really, really supportive.
Okay. And just, speaking to your previous experience where you had the parents that didn't, weren't as involved, what were some, I guess, maybe things that you did, or are there any tips that you have to get the parents to be more involved, or to be able to focus maybe more on the kid to say, hey, I know your parent can't provide what you need right now, but at least you have this?
Well, we actually came up with some activities for them to do at home with their parent. Like we counted it as a grade, like in their classes.
Okay.
So they had to go home and talk to their parents about certain situations. It was a little short activity.
Okay.
But sometimes it was like they all had to color together this picture, like mom does this part, does this part, and just little things to get the family involved.
Okay.
And then it would turn into questions about like emotional intelligence and situations that kids would come across at school. What would the parent like suggest, or like their advice? So it was really cute little things like that. And it would be like every other week they would send home something like that, and we'd count it as a grade. So it was great.
Okay. And it sounds like with that being counted as a grade, that was in collaboration with the student teachers?
with another class. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
So did you guys create that, or was that like a curriculum?
We actually did. There was not just us. There was a collaboration of counselors. I'm sorry, counselors. We came up with a few activities, and then we shared them out with our campuses. The ones that work together.
That is great.
But our district actually turned it into a whole program, and now the CTE teachers are rolling it out and working like they do it. They kind of took it over, and then when they come across something, they'll be like, "Hey, can you check on this?" Like that, like what I said, like they kind of can you check on this kid because this answer was kind of weird or something like that. Like,
Yeah. Working together with the staff and the kids and yourself. That's great.
yes,
Teamwork.
yeah.
So okay. So next up, as far as initiatives and activities, as far as when you're working with the kids, kind of overall, what are some things that you implement to really motivate the kids and just kind of get them focused on their well-being and as well as you being able to support them in doing better?
Well, we have guidance lessons. Our district has guidance lessons that we have to roll out certain times of the year, and that's when our kid we tell the kids like we're big on social emotional intelligence on our campus and our district. I'm sorry, and so we roll out lessons for empathy. We roll out lessons for different situations that the kids come across.
Okay.
Empathy, social skills, even because after COVID, of course, like they lost those connections face to face. So they came back and they're still having difficulty. Some of them are still having difficulty adjusting and, and the anxiety. And we rolled out lessons as a whole. So everybody knows what we're trying to say.
Okay.
But, when it comes to smaller groups or like the kids that actually like, I'm having, anxiety today. So they come in and we try different techniques. But I think our district is really good about pushing social emotional intelligence as a big thing. Like that's part of our whole district initiative to get emotional intelligence and mental health covered.
Okay. And is that something, more recent that they've implemented post-COVID, it sounds like?
Yes.
Okay.
After post-COVID.
Okay. How was it just kind of coming back into the schools after COVID for you?
That's really a good question. It was, I was, when the kids were coming back slowly, right? They came in clumps, right? And we had to have all these, the distance between all these routines, procedures to keep them safe. So we had assigned, I loved this because we had assigned seating in the cafeteria. So that's where they had to sit every day. And so, and it was still distant, but they were still close enough to like talk to each other, turn around and see them. And kids who would never have been friends became friends. That's because amazing. They were so hungry for conversation that they talked to whoever was near them. And I loved that. Like I loved that, it wasn't like, cliques or everybody was like comfortable and they would know like, oh, he's not here today. Oh, wow. They're not like, they knew of who was there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a smaller group of kids, but I love that it was a different variety than like they bonded through that time and like they got to have that support.
Right. And otherwise they wouldn't have.
Right.
Like you said, these were some kids that you just don't see in the same cliques or circles.
Right.
And just kind of with our program, we do the group therapy. So everybody's struggling with anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues. So you get a random bunch of kids sometimes that wouldn't be, hanging out together. And so when they get in those settings, like I said, and they're kind of assigned or, just kind of made to be there, it's amazing the friendships that they can build and just knowing that they can bounce off of each other and not just judging a book by its cover.
Exactly.
Because too often it's like, oh, the kids that play sports or the choir or, kind of the kids over here. And it's so much separation that it, kind of takes a toll on them for those kids that are trying to fit into those settings that maybe it's not the, the right setting for them, at that friend group. And it just makes a whole nother issue that, is unnecessary. So that's amazing that after COVID, and the things that had to be implemented because of the times we were living in were so much of a benefit for some of those kids. And then you as a school counselor being able to see that and just the outcome of it. So, well, I really appreciated your time today to come and speak with us. I feel like, we've had a great conversation to be able to sit down with you and just kind of learn some things further about, your work that you do in the, I was going to say the classroom, but in the counseling room, and working and reaching out to those kids. And I know you mentioned grief earlier on. That's definitely one of I think the hardest places to work with kids in because it is difficult to explain to them, but then also having to support them while their parents are probably grieving as well, and knowing that their support may not be as much. So Again, like I said, I appreciate you sitting down with us today. And, if there's anything before we close out our, podcast today, is there anything you could leave our listeners with? What would that one thing be for students, parents, or other school counselors that you would leave?
I think that the stigma of mental health being a negative thing needs to go away. Like we have physical health, we have mental health, and our kids are feeling it too. Like it's not just an adult thing, it's the kids need it as well. And I just hope that parents are out there and they are able to understand and be supportive of their students, of their children.
Awesome.
I heard once, if we would just treat it like we do any other illness, like if it's a cold, we go to the doctor, we take the medicine, we do the thing to get better.
Yeah.
If everyone would treat mental illness the same way, then the stigma would go away.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that is all for us today. Thanks for tuning in and taking out time in your day to listen in on mental health. And remember, sometimes all it takes is resetting your outlook. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ready, Set, Reset 1. Follow us on Instagram at ready_set_reset1 for mental health tips, laughs, and motivation. And if you know a student or have a child in the Fort Worth area that could use some additional support, visit our website at sunflowersigma.com to see if Reset IOP is right for them. You will find the resources discussed in today's podcast in the description area.